left often pivots to gun laws, but the truth is states like California, for example, have very strict gun laws, as they do in Illinois, in Chicago, as they do in Washington, D.C., as they do in many other jurisdictions that have significant amount of gun violence. So it's never been shown that these gun laws are effective other than in keeping guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens. So instead of all these focus on gun control, we should be focused on what's causing this violence.
You know, Senator, having had a chance to chat with you in the last debate on Fox Business Network, one thing is very clear, that your emergence now has gotten the attention of some of your competitors, including Chris Christie, who dismisses you, well, he speaks highly personally of you, as too young and inexperienced. I want you to react to Chris Christie commenting on, I guess, new.
Does Marco have the experience to be president?
Listen, he doesn't have my experience. You know, I've been through the fire here. New is wonderful, it's great, it's shiny, it's untarnished, and everybody loves new. It's really exciting. New is great until you need experience.
What did you think of that?
Well, look, when you run for president, all these candidates are going to look for what they need to say to convince you to vote for them instead of someone else. So it's a normal part of that process. I like Chris Christie. We get along well. I think he's a good guy. We agree on a lot of issues. I can only tell you who I am and what I've done. And if you look at foreign policy, for example, I say this repeatedly, with all due respect, I don't think there's anybody on that stage that has understanding or has shown better judgment on the issues confronting our country than I have. Whether it's what's happening with ISIS, what's happening now in Libya, what's happening in Syria, what's happening with Russia in the Middle East, time and again, sometimes years before it happened, we clearly warned of what the consequences would be of our current policies under the Obama administration. So we'll continue to focus on that, and we'll let the voters decide who has the right temperament, judgment, and experience to guide our country here into the 21st century. And I remain confident that they'll decide we're the right people for that.
When you have people like David Petraeus and Madeleine Albright petitioning Congress to say, look, it's not a good idea to stall the Syrian refugees and their influx into the United States, that it sends the wrong message, and then to ink it, they get Henry Kissinger to agree. Do you think they're saying that Congress is overdoing it on freezing refugees and that you're making a big mistake, and that in your case as a presidential candidate, it's actually hurting the party?
Well, look, here's the thing. My position isn't that it's not that we don't want to accept refugees, is that we may not be able to accept most of them, because you can't accept people from that part of the world unless they're fully vetted, and most of them cannot be fully vetted. We just don't have accurate databases or information to vet them against. And this is a very unique refugee crisis. In the past, we've understood a lot more about the refugees because they were fleeing communism, they were fleeing something else. But in this case, it's a very unique situation where you have a group like ISIS that is openly trying to use the refugee crisis as a way to insert foreign fighters into the West, where you have people coming from a part of the world where radicalism is growing, where we don't have anything on which to vet them against or compare them to. So common sense still applies. I mean, if it's a 7-year-old child, if it's a 90-year-old widow, if it's a well-known Chaldean priest, these are people you can vet. But a vast number of them are people we will not be able to vet. And given what's happening around the world today, we cannot accept people into this country don't know who they are or why they're coming. And that's a big problem. And I understand it's a unique challenge, but it's one we face here in the 21st century that we have to take very seriously.
You know, separately, as you've been hearing on a domestic issue that's getting a lot of attention, Obamacare, United Healthcare, the latest insurance company, perhaps the biggest one to say these exchanges are killing us. They're costing us an arm and a leg, and we just might opt out. Other insurers, Aetna and a host of others, have said, much as you kind of telegraphed a few years ago, Senator, that they would be coughing up some money and this wouldn't be the draw it was. Now, that is the great backstop for Obamacare, the key funding mechanism. So if they opt out of the exchanges, then you have to wonder how you finance this, and an issue of a bailout has come to mind. In other words, that since there are 8 to 12 million Americans who picked up insurance, you can't leave them high and dry. What do you say?
Well, we had these exchanges. What people don't realize is that under Obamacare, there is something called a high-risk corridor. It's a bailout fund. And what it basically says is that if these companies participate in the exchange and they lose money, they can go after taxpayer money to bail them out for their losses. Last year, I was successful in getting language at the end of the year in the budget bill that took that bailout money away. And because I was able to achieve what we did last year, we saved the American taxpayer $2.5 billion of taxpayer money.
And Darrell Issa has quoted that and commended you for that, and why one of the reasons he's supporting you. But I guess the question comes back to, well, you saved all of this money and you've avoided a means by which insurance companies can get someone to help them out. you do have the risk the issue of a lot of the people who have health care losing that health care, right? What do you do?
Well, that's not the issue. The issue is that the health care plan that's been created is not a sustainable plan. It cannot exist, and it cannot move forward without us bailing out private insurance companies.
No, I know what you're saying.
And that was
they're
the argument that was made from the beginning.
If Hillary Clinton were the nominee, Senator, she will say these 8 to 12 million have lost their insurance because Senator Rubio put that provision in to choke coverage, to choke off the insurers, and eventually to choke off all those people.
Well, that argument can be used to bail out with taxpayer money any industry in America. And at that point, why shouldn't we bail everybody out? Not just insurance companies, but the airlines, the automakers, everyone could be bailed out then. Here's the bottom line. I don't just want to repeal Obamacare, and I think if we can continue with this bailout fund, it continues to damage these exchanges, and as a result, you'll see less companies participating in them. But beyond that, I think that we need to replace it. We need to replace it with a system that allows every American, whether it's through a refundable tax credit or their own employers giving them money, to buy any health insurance they want from any company in America across state lines that is willing to sell it to them. That is a much better way to help people get insurance than a plan that requires the American taxpayer to bail out private insurance companies who have decided to cozy up to the Obama administration.